Welcome, everyone. I'm Scott Dimeshire. I'm Library Director for Hennepin County Library, and I want to welcome you to the Mary Ann Key Book Club panel discussion tonight. If you attended the conversation with Anthony Ray Hinton on April 25th, you saw the impact of the Mary Ann Key Book Club. You saw how the event follows its mission to be a catalyst for conversation. We are honored tonight to continue that conversation that Myron Metcalf had with Mr. Hinton. Tonight's program will be a community panel discussion of Anthony Ray Hinton's memoir, The Sun Does Shine. Our discussion includes moderator Minister JaNaé Bates and panelist Marvin Haynes, Moseka Nhya, and Kevin Reese. Also joining us is book club partner Myron Metcalf, who will introduce our speakers shortly. There'll be an opportunity for audience questions at the end of the program. But before we begin, on behalf of the Hennepin County Library and the Friends of the Hennepin County Library, I'd like to share our land and water acknowledgement. We acknowledge that in Hennepin County, we live and work on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people. This land and the Dakota people belong together. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Dakota sovereignty and aspire to hold ourselves accountable to the work of reconciliation. We ask that community members take an action to learn more about indigenous communities who have resided for centuries in the area that is now Hennepin County. Folks can check out book lists created by Hennepin County Library staff, participate in library events celebrating American Indian Month in Minnesota throughout the month of May, and support local indigenous organizations. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsors. The Mary Ann Key Book Club is made possible with funding and support from the Friends of the Hennepin County Library, and we'd also like to thank our media sponsor, the Star Tribune. At this time, I'd like to introduce Myron Metcalf. Myron is the founder of the Mary Ann Key Book Club and a valued partner of the Hennepin County Library. He is currently a senior college basketball reporter and nationally syndicated radio host with ESPN. He writes a semi-monthly column for the Star Tribune, and we are honored to have him as a partner for the Mary Ann Key Book Club. Please welcome Myron Metcalf.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out, especially on a warm Minnesota day. The Timberwolves are playing, so you all are loyal and devoted, and I appreciate that. It's going to be a great panel tonight. I'd like to introduce our incredible panelists. Minister JaNaé Bates is a womanist, theologian, and Fulbright scholar. She has nearly 2 decades of academic and professional experience in ministry, social justice, politics, and communications, including over 7 years as the communications director of Isaiah and Faith in Minnesota. Her work has included implementing the race-class gender narrative framework and co-creating and co-writing the award-winning animated series Mine. In 2024, Minister Bates is launching a storytelling coalition called Liberation Aloud, and a companion podcast recorded and monitored along with her husband, Dantes, who has been incarcerated for the past 18 years. She is currently the interim co-executive director for Faith in Minnesota and Isaiah. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister JaNaé Bates.
Hey.
Marvin Haynes was raised in a loving family of 5 siblings by his mother and father in North Minneapolis. His childhood was marked by the strong values of love, discipline, and respect. At the age of 16, his life took a tragic turn when he was falsely accused and wrongly convicted of murder. Despite maintaining his innocence, he was sentenced to life in prison and spent 19 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. In December, his fight for justice finally paid off when new evidence emerged, leading to Haynes' exoneration and release. Now at 36 and a free man, Haynes is determined to advocate for criminal justice reform and support others who are wrongfully convicted. Welcome in, Marvin Haynes. Moseka Nhya is a recent transplant to the Twin Cities, journeying from Atlanta, Georgia, to join the Legal Revolution Law Firm, a nonprofit working to put the keys to the law in the hands of those most impacted by it. As a multicultural, multilingual graduate of paralegal studies, she aims to challenge the societal stigma and shame put upon those who are formerly incarcerated. As a justice-impacted individual, Moseka's lived experience led her to this question: what happens when the gates open but you're still not free? The realities revealed in Reentry fuel her passion to speak out on the harms of institutionalized dehumanization and to join the efforts addressing the innumerable collateral consequences that tempt recidivism for those involved with the criminal legal system. Welcome, Moseka, Nhya. And last but certainly not least, Kevin Reese, a Minneapolis native, spent 14 years in the criminal justice system and is the co-founder of The Bridge. Is the founder of The Bridge, a grassroots group aiming to abolish mass incarceration. As the co-founder and co-executive director of Until We Are All Free movement and the CEO of Until We Are All Free Consulting Group, he advocates for transformative criminal justice overhaul. Kevin is also a published and award-winning poet. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Reese.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today, and I am really excited to get to have this conversation with some really dope people that you all should really get to know. All right, so this book club is incredible. So thank you, Myron, for the Mary Ann Key Book Club. And so today we are going to be talking about this phenomenal book. So I don't know how many of you folks in the room have actually gotten to read the book. Yeah, I see some like, yes. Or even were in this space last month when the dynamic author was here. But this story is incredibly powerful. And so I just as like a kick it off question, which facilitator transparency, they knew that this question was coming. But what was an aspect about this book, a quote, a theme, a thing that really stood out for you that it was like, this resonates with me in my experience? And we can start with you, Moseka.
Well, I first want to say thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be on this stage. I'm grateful to be among great company. And the answer to that question, something that really resonated with me was when Mr. Hinton said something about, the state of Alabama stole my 30s, but they will not steal, his joy. He still forgave. Yeah. And I think that really spoke to me because it just highlighted that capacity for the human spirit to be resilient. To forgive, his capacity to forgive, his capacity to show up despite the injustices that he faced. So it just really hit home for me.
What about you, Marvin?
I mean, the whole book for me, I felt every part of it because I lived that life, so I understand everything that he went through. It touched me, truly, especially the part where he was found guilty and he still forgave everybody that did it to him. And then, he just was so hopeful and just had the faith to, and he just was relentless. And, he just was so strong in that moments of everything that he experienced, losing his mom. And it just, everything he experienced, I felt what he felt. I felt that. So I definitely, some of them things was just like, I couldn't even really get through it, because it just touched me. I experienced that, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
For me, it felt like the same ancestor went to talk to him that came to talk to me. There was a moment where he began circle right on death row, and he had a desire for the man that was on death row with him to meet and gather and have conversations around humanity. Yeah. And from that place, he was able to spark magic. And that's a little bit of my story. I did the same thing while I was incarcerated. So I seen a thing that I know to be true. It's the power of circle, and it's the power of what happens when humans gather together. And he did the same thing on death row. So when I read that part, it was affirming to, okay, how do we do more of that? Because this was a right thing to do. So I felt very ancestrally connected to it when I seen that part.
Yeah, that's real. There is a big theme in this book that shows up time and time again, beginning to end. and actually the two of you named it, even in your response, is this idea of forgiveness. It is, there's just a through line, and I mean different levels of folks and systems and things, right, that actually get offered forgiveness. And so I'm just like, when you were reading this book and when you're thinking about your own experiences, how does that show up for you? How are you thinking about that? We could start with you, Marvin.
I mean, you know what? Actually, the part when Brian came to visit him, his lawyer came to visit him.
Yeah.
And he knew for a fact that, he was going to get justice. He never stopped believing. I felt the same way. Like, like when that lawyer came to see him and he just was like, this is the man that's going to save my life. I had that moment when I was going through as well. So when he went back to his cell and he got on his knees and prayed and thanked God, he didn't even know he was going to get out. He didn't even know his case was going to be accepted. He had no idea what was going to happen, but he just had that unrelentless faith. He was just unwavering with everything. So that part touched me too. But like I said, that whole book touched me.
Yeah.
I wasn't even expecting to know that. I kind of knew his story a little bit, but to read it and just see my life in his story. I mean, it's different circumstances or whatever, but I feel like we went through the same thing. So yeah, the whole book just touched me. But that part, because when my lawyers came to my life, I knew these was gonna be the guys that was gonna get me out. When I met Andrew, Anna, Sydney, I knew these guys was gonna be the people that was gonna get me out. I believed it. I never stopped believing that. So when I see them, I felt it. I felt it.
Yeah.
It's hard to even explain.
Yeah. And do you think, sorry, I'm going to keep with you for a second because I want to tease us out a little bit, right? So do you, the way in which you're connecting, like how Anthony or Ray, so he goes by Ray, he got to experience this, like that sense of forgiveness for himself, right? And I mean, quite frankly, him being an innocent man, but still getting to feel like he was deserving of forgiveness in a large scale. And he offered like what some would consider like radical, controversial forgiveness sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like with many levels. So are you having a very similar experience where you have been exonerated, you were wrongly incarcerated? Do you, have you been, and it's only been since December, so totally understandable if you're still on a journey, but have you been thinking about what is forgiveness, if you even want to offer that to the folks who who contributed to you being incarcerated for as long as you were?
I mean, with me, I kind of feel like he did. I prayed for the people that done this to me. You know what I'm saying? Even the victims, it's not their fault. So I kind of was like, I understood even at 16, I knew okay, well, this happened to me. It's unfortunate, but I feel like it's a plan for me. I feel like God trying to teach me something, take me down a journey. I don't know what it was. I used to argue with God a lot. You know what I'm saying? Why is you taking me through these type of things? But I actually didn't really think about me forgiving somebody. I really wasn't mad. I was more kind of I can't really describe it. It was kind of like the justice system failed me, but I kind of was and I kind of felt voiceless when that happened to me. And that resonated with me too. He felt voiceless. He didn't have no one wanted to listen to him. And I felt the same way, but I kind of really didn't think about that. My focus was more the type of person I want to be after this, to show them that this the type of person, to show society basically y'all was missing out on a good person. You know what I mean? Me being wrongly convicted. So I just wanted to show people my story, show people that, to be honest with you, I never really thought about just how, I wasn't mad at nobody. I really wasn't mad, and that's what got me through that. I was around so much just people that was just so negative. I was the opposite of that, and that's what kind of kept me, held my head up high going through that. So with me, it was just like I said, it was just I had faith, and I wasn't thinking about that. I was just more I'm gonna get justice. I don't know how I'm gonna get it, but I didn't really think about it. I didn't think about forgiving nobody. I'm not mad at nobody. It happened. These things been happening before I was even alive. So, I mean, like I said, I just wanted to show people, I want to show people what type of person society was missing on.
Kev, what about you? This notion of forgiveness.
Forgiveness costs. It's gonna cost somebody. So you know, when I read that in the theme, in the thread of his book, is redemption and forgiveness. As a writer myself, I'm asking myself, do he really feel this way? Was there a universe that would accept his book if he wasn't so forgiving? Was there a universe that he would have said, no, this sucks, this hurt, this was attempted murder, screw all of y'all, screw the state of Alabama, this was not right, I don't have no more smiles, I don't want to come and give my forgiveness for Thanksgiving. So I'm asking ourselves, how much do we lead with our forgiveness to a system that has harmed us and hurt us so much? Are we disrespecting the harmed versions of ourselves? The versions of ourselves that was the victim? The version of yourself that was 16, handcuffed, put in a car? Do he have the right to be angry? What if he sat up here and he told all y'all, I'm really angry, and screw the city of Minneapolis and everybody that had anything to do with it? Would y'all love him the same? Yes. Right? So when I read that, I was thinking, in 10 years, I hope I don't have to start with forgiveness when I'm telling my story to rooms like this. I hope I can start with the truth. Because the truth is, you really did forgive. The truth is, we really is loving and forgiving and caring people. Just don't want to be further harmed and victimized by it. Because what are we doing to the folks behind us who may not forgive? Are they less valuable? Is there a pathway for them to this stage? If they're saying, I'm harmed and somebody gonna have to talk to me, I'm gonna need reparations in some form or fashion. Do we love them the same? So when I read that, I was saying, shout out to you, Black man, for writing this really engaging book with themes that's really nice and palatable to America. But do he really, really, really feel that way?
And I'll say for a long time, I was in that anger space. And so I will not pretend that forgiveness for me came easy, or it was easy to forgive. But at a certain point, I had to realize that it wasn't about the other person. Like, to keep my own sanity, to keep my own sense of self, that radical forgiveness kind of served that radical liberation. Because as long as I held on to that anger and that hurt and being their victim, I was still not free. So I think that forgiveness is a journey, it is a spectrum. It's not all or nothing, but it is something that we have to give to for ourselves, and it's towing that dangerous line of, is this gonna be taken advantage of?
Yeah. Wow. It's powerful. And to even hear like the spectrum of the journey that happens. Folks on the stage know, and you all kind of know a little bit in my bio, but my husband is currently incarcerated, and he's been incarcerated for 18 and a half years. And his incarceration is due to the death of a person, which was a horrible mistake, but it was his fault. And the family of the victim has been advocating for his release for years now. And it took this like radical level of forgiveness, right? And it is one that we talk about in like restorative justice and restorative justice practices, which sometimes feels very heady. Like, it's hard to we don't get to see it really often. And so, but it's often something we demand in justice spaces. And then also recognizing that forgiveness goes all kinds of different ways, not even both ways. Left, right, up, down, north, south, right? And what does it look like when it's so complicated? And there's so many definitions too, right? Yeah, so I just pushing or pulling the thread even a little bit more, thinking about what could potentially like this idea of like a radical, like devoutness to forgiveness in whatever way that looks for you. Like how do you think that could impact the society we currently live in?
I mean, I think you spoke to it, the ripple effect. It's not just you and your husband, it's the victim's family. It's also the community that surrounds them. So if we look at punishment the way that it is now, it's out of, a vindictiveness, a vengeance. But what if we reframed and thought of, rehabilitation? We thought of surrounding, these already taught with tension, high emotions, high consequence situations, and wrap them, I mean, this sounds radical, but like wrap them with love. Right now it's so much anger and us versus them. We don't get anywhere with the us versus them. So I think it could lead to a better community. It could lead to a better ecosystem to where we can come up with better solutions other than locking someone up and not even, considering them worthy of a future.
Either of you, you don't have to comment on it if you didn't have anything you wanted to add, but I want to make space for it.
I mean, with me, I was, like I said, I went at 16 years old, and I was in segregation for 9 months when I was going to trial. I happened to meet Kevin and Reese while I was in there, you know what I mean? So I used to talk to him and just, tell him my story and stuff like that. He got me through a lot of that stuff, even when I got to prison. So me meeting these type of people, I used to tell them in prison, like, man, bro, you gonna get out there and be somebody. So I met a lot of people that deserve a second chance. Everybody might not be innocent, but it's some good people also incarcerated. I met some wonderful people, intelligent people that I got a lot of knowledge from, that I got a lot of advice from, guidance from. And Kevin Reese was one of them people. Like literally, I used to come to him about a lot of my problems, women problems, legal problems, you know what I mean? Just all type of problems, and be like, he used to get tired of me talking to him about them type of things. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, you gonna figure it out, but I definitely think a lot of people that I met, a lot of people that, deserve to get out. It's a lot of people. You can go to prison right now and just do your sentence. You ain't gotta do nothing. You could just watch TV your whole sentence. But I know people that took the time to rehabilitate themselves, to educate themselves, and become different people while they was in there. So from my experience being in there doing so much time, I met some good people. I met some bad people, but majority I met a lot of good people that I spent some time with while I was in there.
Yeah. All right, so we have talked around it a little bit, but like this notion of even this potentially unforgivable system, not just like forgiving people, but the system in which it happens in. That system often is racist, anti-Black, right? It creates all kinds of wedges. It creates the levels of misrepresentation that tends to happen. So people get poor representation. We saw that for sure with Anthony Ray Hinton's lawyer, who, my God, like just the level of which there was so much extraction of finances from his family with nothing, right? Like even during his appeal, seeing that his lawyer came up with like just basically bullet points of 5 things of why he deserved an appeal, or to have his case retried. But then when he got real representation, they came up with whole paragraphs, and it was like over 30 different reasons. And like just the levels and layers. And we know systems often as it is a bunch of human beings who make choices, right? That's what a system is. It's a bunch of people who make choices over time. What do you think about, or like, what is your disposition on this like notion of the systems and the ways in which they have been anti-Black, racist? Do you have hope anywhere in there? Do you think that this is just the reality of how things are and this is what we just got to navigate, or that it will eventually get better? Like where do you fall in there?
Should I start? Yeah, the system, you know, when you in the courtroom or you in the interrogation room or when you getting charge papers, it sucks because you're getting this language that's explaining a behavior that they're saying is against the law, AKA the societal norms, which means we have power over what we finna do with your body. It's a real tripped out experience. But you have this other experience as being a human living in America of like this living contradiction around the laws. So it's a moral question. For me, the question is, America, are we ready to go on trial for our own laws, right? What would happen if America went on trial based on its own laws? And then we would see where like anti-blackness, caste systems, economics, we would all see it come into place. So when you sit there and you know that truth, you feel black as hell, excuse my language. You feel poor as hell, excuse my language. You feel underrepresented because you don't understand this language that they're speaking in this courtroom, and you don't really have the power over what's finna happen to your body. I remember being in solitary confinement with you. When you had a hung jury, you were about 16, 17, I was about 18, 19. And I remember you coming back like I had a hung jury. And I remember according to what I thought a hung jury was, you was finna go home. That mean that the case wasn't good, bro, you finna go home. And to see them take more language and come back and retrial them, it did make me question hope and say, what is this? Like according to their own system, there was a jury that said, we ain't sure. And they still didn't let them go. I never forgot that. That was something that stayed with me. So I lost faith in hung juries for sure. I X'd that off the list. Those are a facade, they're not true. So that's the question that I would ask myself. I ask myself that all the time, and I will pose to this room to ask ourselves that. What would it look like for America to go on trial for its own laws? And sleep with that. So.
What can you say after that?
What you think?
No, I think, I mean, in my role, so I work at a nonprofit law firm here in Minneapolis, and you see it play out plain as day. You know, put two BCA reports side by side, you get, you know, an individual of color and a white person, and you see this track record just build and build and build. First strike, this person is going to prison. So what was the difference, you know? And the only thing you can come to a conclusion is their race. And so when we take into consideration that like communities of color, specifically Black communities, bear the brunt of these disparities. And so that only continues when that cycle only continues when someone comes out of incarceration. If it's predominantly Black communities that are over-policed, under-resourced, in reentry, when you're trying to get gainful employment, when you're trying to get housing, trying to rebuild your life, you're already at a disadvantage. So it just keeps us behind just consistently. So all that said, I do have hope because I feel like, you know, even as a newcomer to Minneapolis, in 2023, there were 8 legislative changes, you know, and the energy that the city has. You know, everyone on this stage has really been instrumental in Restore the Vote, MRRA. These are all legislative changes that, you know, took a lot of work. It was not just 2023 and it happened. So it really required that energy, that momentum, and the hope of individuals to say, you know what, we're gonna put our energy into this. We're gonna go to the Capitol. We're gonna talk to our legislators. So there is hope, but it requires action and it requires looking at the uncomfortable truth, first acknowledging it, and then you could do something about it. But there's hope.
Yeah, with me, I just, like I said, I'm extremely hopeful. I knew for a fact, like, it's gonna be some people that come around. Even though I come from, like I said, I come from the struggle. I come from inner city. I'm Black, obviously, so I mean, them things did play a role in me getting wrongly convicted. But I always was still hopeful. Even when I got found guilty, I was like, it's gonna be somebody that comes and see what I've been saying. I didn't even understand what was happening with me, but I kind of knew like it was gonna be someone that comes in my life and be like, well, they're gonna research my case or whatever it may be, and it's gonna be the right people in place. It just takes the right people to be in place, and it's the community that vote these guys in that to organize and it takes the community to put the right people in place, So it was like Mary to get me justice. It took her to recognize like, okay, this guy is actually innocent. Let's do something about it and put their money where their mouth is. She took action, and there was a lot of people that knew I was actually innocent, But yeah, I just think, like I said, it takes the community to change these problems that's going on.
Yeah. Thank you. Different levels of hope coming from different places and spaces, and questions that need to be answered in order to feel like there's space for hope. All right, let's go to, I don't even know if it'll be a happier space, but hopefully a lighter one maybe. Friendship. What we saw in this book were some really dynamic friendships. I'm particularly thinking about the friendship with Lester, who was his best friend through thick and thin since they were youth. And like, he stayed with him through the entire process, the entire experience, and they continue to be best friends today. And he knew like, this dude not only believes me, like I trust him with everything. And I know my husband, he talks about like the power of friendship, companionship, both in and out of the prison. So folks who he knows he can trust and lean on, who are outside of the prison, which is a few. It's a few. He talks a lot about, how you think folks were gonna be there who aren't there, but also the friendships that he's also made in the prison. So I would love to hear from you all. We'll start with you, Kev, on friendship. Like, who have you had in your corner? Who surprised you in friendship? Like, what kept you going?
I would say first, the idea of friendship, like in prison. I've never seen community that way, even coming from community. Like in prison, when I seen men like demonstrate the way that we demonstrate. It took a couple years in for it to really settle on me what was happening. And what was happening, it was a bunch of honest people, right? Because in prison, there ain't a lot of space to look someone in the face and tell a lie. That's why I always believed you when you told me you were innocent. By the way, it's this theory that everybody in prison is saying that they're innocent. That's actually not true. Prison is actually filled with a lot of people who take accountability and take responsibility. By the time we in prison, we're laughing about it, saying they maybe gave us too much time, it was some BS. But there's only a few people that saying that they're innocent, and you always maintained your innocence. And we always, it was really serious to us. So I will say that, how I seen folks in prison demonstrate, nobody really starved. Nobody went without. If there was anyone that you needed like a soup or like some soap or something, someone to give it to you. Even in free community, I hadn't seen that level of like giving how you see in prison, because we're like all slaves behind this wall. And then you transcend that, and then it's very tribal as well within that. And we bled and sweat with each other. We all went in there as youth, and I remember feeling really safe because we were all there. There was an energy of, well, when nobody finna harm one of us, we've been harmed enough. And that gave us strength, and that gave us purpose, and it allowed us to, like, even being on this stage now, like, walk in our purpose without being further victimized. That was something that I always took great pride in. And then, there's a level of friendship that only years and decades for you to be able to see it. I would say for me, how it's 1 out of every 3 black men. It used to be 4. It's 1 out of every 3 black men is going to spend some time in jail or prison at some point. I really didn't, how powerful that was until I was out probably 60 days or something like that, and we was at an event. And my family had to come in, like it was like some commotion in the back. I don't know what's happening or whatever. So I later get to find out my friend, my best friend, he done went into full cardiac arrest back there. Just the idea of me being home. I didn't know that it hit him that way, that, he seen his friend go to prison for 15 years. and he was home and to see me in community and the like they had to really call the ambulance in there and put this man on the oxygen tank. We laugh about it now, but by the time I get to the back, it was just pure love for his brother being home, and that grounded me like, wow. And this is a friend that I didn't really hear from. He's no Lester, right? He's no Lester. I ain't hear from him a lot. But back to forgiveness. Those are the folks who I saved my forgiveness for. Yeah. I never held it against him. That's my brother. I knew what it was. I always felt the love in my heart. I ain't hear from him in 15 years. I heard from him maybe twice. But I ain't hold that. As soon as I came home, I went and got my hair cut by him. Those are the real forgiveness. That's who I saved my forgiveness for. So I would say now, fast forward, we are a real fraternity. The mass incarceration generation, what's happening now is not mass incarceration, by the way. We're in a different era. But the folks that got locked up during the mass incarceration generation, when we see each other in the streets, it'd be a treat. They really make me feel safer. On paper, they may say they're this person or that person, but when I see them, it'd be a dance in the street. They make me feel safer. The fraternity is real. The love that we have for each other is real. That shared experience is real. And we're really all in a place right now in our lives where we genuinely want the best for each other and willing to do whatever we can to support one another. And I'm still I'm still so grateful for that every day. So, yeah, the fraternity is real.
For me, like I was sent to prison at 16, so when I went in there, I was kind of like, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. So when I did meet some people that I kind of was cool with, these guys were sentenced to 15, 13 years. I spent a lot of time with these guys incarcerated, and all of them went home, and I still was there. So that was kind of like, dang, the people that I grew close with, that these guys cried leaving me in prison, and they was going home. You know what I mean? So to see that and be like, I definitely met some good people in there that I built some friendships with. That helped me through that time. That helped me through a lot of that time in the beginning of my time. They used to tell me, like, man, don't never stop fighting. Just encourage me. Just give me that information that I needed to carry on. You know what I mean? Because it was hard for me. I ain't gonna lie. From the first beginnings, that come to the dinner and chop it up with Reese, or just a lot of my friends that I was in there with, I still friends with to this day. Some of them I lost, unfortunately, that passed away while I was in there. But like I said, the guys that I did build relationships with, I am still friends with. Kevin was one of them. Like I said, he's like helped me through a lot of that time. That stuff was so difficult on me. It gave me so much information to just keep fighting, keep my head up, and never stop fighting. Even though I was just one of them type of people, regardless if I didn't have friends, I was gonna fight. I was gonna be strong. I was gonna go through it. But just having that and just giving that information and encouragement, that helped me through that. So it's needed sometimes, but sometimes you gotta watch who you friends with too in there, because a lot of people is not really your friends. So I had to learn that as well, navigating through that situation. But I'm blessed. I'm just blessed to overcome something like that and still be able to have good friends that I met in that place.
I'll say from a woman's perspective, the world of prison, it doesn't change. It's not that different from out here. I think particularly for women, there's that need for belonging. There's that need for community. And I will say my experience in prison, those are some of the most real and raw friendships that I've had. You go there and you're at your lowest. These are people who are with you when you need to survive. So these are friendships forged out of survival, out of, coping, out of just making the time more bearable. So, you see the TikToks and they're real. You do your makeup, you do, commissary dinners and all of that. But we're also there for each other for the really hard things. When someone comes back from court, we just celebrated Mother's Day, the day that you see, one of your friends get their papers, termination of rights. Who is there? These are the women that are holding you up during that time. So I will say that the relationship that I had on the inside, I will credit that to, my survival and making it through. The relationships on the outside, I will be honest. I think navigating that after prison has been the more challenging feat. Because how do you relate with people? You start to feel like you have a scarlet letter. So how do you approach relationships? Am I a little weird? You know, now we're acknowledging post-incarceration syndrome, and that is real. We talk about being institutionalized. How do you relate to someone after missing formative moments in your life? And sometimes that manifests as, you know, being a little strange, being removed, having, you know, your triggers that you need to navigate, relationships, family relationships, all of those things. So it is a bit more challenging, but I will say I found solace. You know, that sense of belonging is definitely there with other people that have gone through it. Like, they can understand you more, you can relate more, because you don't have to translate yourself for them to understand. So I will say that's a consideration I didn't really have at the time of getting free. You know, what about friendships? What are those gonna look like? And you also feel guilty, at least I did. You know, you get free, you start looking at the clock like, oh, I would be at pill call right now. I would be eating. What are my friends doing? You get out, you get into the motions of daily life, and you start to get, you know, a little frustrated. And then you're like, no, I'm free. I should be happy. I have friends that are still on the inside. So just navigating all of those dynamics has been, you know, a reality of reentry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pulling on this thread of friendship a little bit. I know there was of course like the Lesters, right? But then there was a pretty controversial friendship that he had within the prison as well, with a Klansman who lynched a black man, right? And when I read that, I think about my own husband, who he runs a debate team in the prison, and he runs a social justice group. And I came to the prison for his graduation, because he is the first in his whole family with a college degree, amen. Amen. And so when I came for his graduation, this big burly white man walks up to me, and he sticks his hand out, and he's like, I want to shake your hand. Aren't you Dantes' wife? And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, well, I'm an oath keeper. Right? I wanted to snatch my hand back real quick. Did my mic, am I still here? Okay, yes. And he says, I'm an oath keeper. He was like, but I've met your husband, and he is my hero. And of course I ran to my husband like, babe, who is this man? What is this about? But he began to tell me about how he's been involved in all this work, and how they actually have built this friendship, this camaraderie, which is an unusual one. And it probably would not have been forged outside of prison walls, right? And so have you found yourself in those unusual friendships where it's like, here's a person that I see them, I have empathy for them, and I might not have if it was out in the free world?
I would start and say, yeah, my brothers look like all kinds of stuff. And it takes a moment when we be together for me to take like a step back and be like, man, I really love these people. And like, it really be colorblind moments, and I really don't even believe in the colorblind whole universe, but it'd be real colorblind moments. So I wish it was out of college or in another place that we met. I wish prison wasn't the backdrop.
Yeah.
But in that space, it does transcend color lines. Some of the best conversations that I've had, some of the folks that I've learned the most from, they look like all kinds of things. They all took different kind of pathways to that place. And it definitely shifts the way you see humanity and the way you see others. I will say, I picked that up in prison, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But y'all want to comment? Or?
I mean, me as well. I met a lot of people that I used to conversate with in there too. Like, I mean, just because I used to smile a lot, people used to come up to me and be like, man, why you smiling so much? Why you so happy all the time?
Yeah.
And I used to tell them, like, look, I'm so happy for what's to come for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, even when my appeal was denied, I used to still be like upbeat, because I knew I was going to get up out of that place. I was going to find a route. So it used to be like unusual people coming up to me that I built friendships with. They used to be like, I used to give advice to, like, man, you got to be hopeful, you know, just build them relationships with, just because they used to see me just how I used to handle myself in there, you know what I mean? They'd just come to me and be like, man, why you do this or why you do that? And I used to just give him the information like, look, you just gotta stay hopeful. You gotta believe. I always knew that. So I used to have a next door neighbor. His name was Russia. He was a Russian dude. He was in there for killing his wife. But he was smart, one of the smartest dude I met in there. He owned so much property. The man was like well off, you know. So I used to talk to him and stuff. He used to be down a lot. I built a real relationship with him. He was cool. I used to just go to his cell, talk to him, like, man, keep your head up. It's possible. You got a lot of time, but it's possible to change your life and get your time cut. I used to, you know, just chop it up with him, and he used to just thank me for that all the time and be like, man, you just so. And when I got out, I talked to him. He's just like, man, you always said this. You always talked to me about this. And he told me, like, he said, I know now that it's possible for me. Like, literally. So when he told me that, I was like, it touched me just to know, like, because he was so down about everything, to know that now he got some hope, you know, just to believe, to see what happened to me. So, yeah, I met some good people in there that I was able to, you know, build relationships with. Unusual people, but it was cool.
Marvin, 6 seconds for Lenny. Free Goodlow.
Oh, yeah, Goodlow, too. That's one of my dudes
Free
that
Lenny,
really,
man.
Goodlow, man, he's an older guy that I met. I knew him from the streets.
Yeah.
I heard of him or whatever, and I met him in prison, but, man, he used to give me so much information as well. I used to hate him at first because he used to always tell me, work on your case, man, you innocent, work on your case. And it used to get me down because I'm like, I ain't know the routes at first. I ain't know what to do. So I used to go in my cell and I just lay down and think like, man, I used to be mad at him for telling me this all the time. Because I'm like, out of all the people that we around, he coming to me and telling me this all the time. Like, you hanging with these guys, they finna get out or they're gonna get out before you. And he was right. A lot of the people that I was doing time with, they got out doing 10 years or 13 years and I was left in there. And he used to tell me like, look, man, just make sure you focus. He used to tell me this literally when I was like 17, when I first was coming into prison, just beat it in my head, go to the law library, sign me up. He just used to pump it in my head all the time. What I used to tell you when I used to see you, like, bro, I hate him. Like, he get on my nerves. You know what I mean? But I'm glad he used to do that because he really, and then when he seen me how hard I was going about my justice, he was just like, man, I'm so proud of you because this is what I was trying to tell you. Like, I seen that you was really actually innocent and you really took it serious. You know what I mean? I always was gonna take it serious. I just didn't know. I was discombobulated. I was young. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it, you know? So a lot of people turned their back on me. I had to do a lot of things in the beginning by myself. So when he used to pump it in my head, I used to be like, just so mad at him, be like, cause I ain't know the routes. So I met some good people in there.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. No? All right. We're gonna go off script a little bit because some of the things y'all have named have sparking some stuff for me. Like Marvin, you in particular, like you noting like that you was always smiling in prison. I'm not surprised because you always smiling now, and we know why you smiling. Like we're like clear, right? But like what kept you smiling in there? You saying like I had hope, like I knew, like what actually gives you hope? Because I do understand that it is. You know, we've talked a little bit, well, quite a bit, about the ways in which time has been robbed from you, from all of you. Like, there are things that, like, the way in which time is operated. And I know, Kev, you have talked about this a lot, like even the concept of time and what it means to, like, spend time, do time. Like, what has really given you hope in all of this?
I used to find inspiration from the smallest things. Literally, like I see something and be like, "Oh, it's possible." You know, like God really do work. So I kind of used to see the smallest things. One of the things that I seen Simone Biles when she won and she dropped to the ground and she cried, and I just seen just the triumph in her. I'm like, that's how I'm gonna feel when I got out. I cried. You know what I'm saying? Seeing that because it was just like. I knew I was gonna get out.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. And it just was like, it touched me when I see that. When I seen that, you know, like I felt that. I was like, damn, like she fell to the ground and thank God and looked in the air. I was just like, everything that she worked for, she accomplished it right there. And she just got on her knees and thanked God, and I seen that. I swear, it gave me so much hope. But like I said, little things used to just give me hope. Just seeing the possibilities, knowing that everything is possible. I always knew that, and I just taught myself that. Well, I didn't even teach it. My mom, I don't know where I got it from, but I used to just tell myself, like, you're gonna overcome this. You're gonna be positive about it. I'm telling you, like, people used to look at me and be like, man, why you so happy? Why you so smiley all the time? You know what I mean? But I always was like I said, I was getting inspiration from the smallest things and seeing things. Even if I read something, just a quote or something, you know, and it touched me. It tell me, like, keep your head up. It don't matter. Even when I used to talk to God, I used to be like, God, look, this is hard on me. I hate going through this. I used to be telling God, like, look, I don't even want to wake up some days, you know what I'm saying? But he'd wake me up, and I'd be like, well, my journey ain't over.
Amen.
Gotta keep fighting.
Amen. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but
No, don't apologize at all.
I think it speaks to for me, my answer, I don't think I had a choice but to have hope. And I would like to say that I was smiley and positive about things, but I wasn't. And I didn't have, I'm standing here next to people who have spent significantly more time than me. And so I will admit that I did not have that positivity, but I knew that just out of survival, we're gonna have to figure it out some way, somehow, because this is hopefully the worst that it can get, And back to the community, like, I feel like we just would relive our moments. We would talk about all our relationships. So it's kind of the hope that we could get that again. And I feel like even just being here, this is what I was hoping for. Like, that was my motivation, because what other opportunity do I have? Like, I'm gonna forge a path for myself. I don't know what it's gonna look like. And that's how I know it wasn't of me. It must have been God speaking to me, telling me, hold on. And it was a ride, it's still a ride. But just pushing, and it took 7 years. For some people, they get out and they get right to it, but just the hope that one day this will all be, for something, it will lead me to something. And that's the only thing that I had to hold on to, because you get out and then you realize it's not over, the fight's not over. That's the part that really hit me, because whatever hope you have, that's the hope when you're on the inside and you're dreaming. But when you come out, you realize, I can't get an apartment. Like, all these job interviews, I have to tell them about this. My friends and my family, I've been gone. How do I reconnect with them? So it's a whole nother batch of hurdles that so you just have to hope for something way out in the future that's gonna sustain you for the path that you're gonna be on. So that was my hope. I didn't have it. I just had to just fake it till I made it.
yeah.
And I'll make it one day.
I would say, I think you touched on it a little bit. You said your mom. You damn right, your mom. I would say my grandmother. We was raised with hope, right? Before the system ever got a hold of us, we were hopeful children. We were all children. We were too. So it was that same hope. When I went to prison, I had to take 14 and a half years. It was my grandmother who spoke over my life and said, shouldn't have been doing that, I told you. And not only when you come home, those is gonna be the best years of your life.
Yeah.
And she told me I probably won't even be here to see it. And that was all I needed to hear. So, like, I spent years in prison. How was I in prison? I probably wasn't hopeful. I was probably just Kev, because, I don't know, I just kind of knew, similar to how y'all knew, I just kind of knew I was called to do something. So that hope, it started at home, though. I would say that started with my grandmother. My grandmother raised me with hope and raised us with hope. And that system wasn't strong enough to break it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Freedom. All right, that is a consistent theme through the book as well. This notion of freedom, We saw that Anthony Ray Hinton, he found his freedom often through his own imagination, the very vivid
Really,
imagination, right, that he had. And then he also put some action into wanting others to experience that. So had the book club. Like, he found ways in order to find freedom even when he was not physically free. And most certainly now he's written this book, which is a way in which he's like been able to give voice to himself and experience some levels of freedom. But what does freedom look like, feel like, taste like, smell like? What is it? What is it for you? How do you get it? How do you hold on to it? Do you have it?
I would start with that one because I guess I've been probably free the longest. Well, no, actually, you, Seka. It's a daily struggle because that experience is abnormal. It's an abnormal thing to be taken away from society and locked inside of another society within society. You would begin to ask yourself, did that really happen to me? And you will begin to like see those cycles in other sectors of the world that you're living in. So it's a daily question that I am asking myself. Are we free? Am I free? I think the freedom for me is in the question, the ability to be able to ask the question and honestly answer the question. When you don't have the ability to ask yourself the question, that's when I feel most in bondage. So I always ask myself the question, does this make me feel free? Is this something that's liberating me, or is this another thing that is, putting me in bondage? That's to, what I wanted to, share with my other panelists, to ask yourselves that question, right? Because we're going to be asked these questions, but make sure you ask yourself that first. And you asking yourself these questions, most often around what freedom is. So it's a daily struggle. We live in a world where technically none of us is free. It says the guy with a hat on that says, until we are all free, back to hope. This is just hope. This is the prayer that I left at the door. This is the prayer that I knew I was going home before him, and I knew little Marvin was behind me. This is the prayer that I left at the door. Welcome home, bro. We still trying to answer the same question, man. Yeah. Are we free? And what exactly does that mean? So I don't really have an answer for it, except I ask myself the question about 3 times a week. Am I free? Is this making me more free? And the only thing that makes me free is when I'm able to ask the question. So keep asking yourself the question. Yeah.
For me, the question that I came to ask myself was, what happens when the gates open and you're still not free? Because I realized that I was not free just because that gate opened. And even though it's been 7 years for me since my experience, I would say only the past couple years, I would say I finally feel free. I spent so long in shame. Sorry. Yeah, a lot of, like, it didn't end when the gates opened. So for me, freedom has been found in the moments where I could be authentic about who I am. It's been a journey of radical self-love, of radical self-care, self-forgiveness. And when I can answer that question, not only for myself, but for others, the work that I do, to be able to speak in prisons as a full circle moment where I once was. I feel like when I can speak to power, that's when I find freedom. But it's so complex because you're right, waking up at 9 a.m. sometimes, like I gotta be somewhere, or lose my job. Like, am I free? But, I feel like freedom can manifest in so many ways. It can be in rebuilding relationships. I just took a trip with my family, 12 years. We haven't been in space together like that. That felt like freedom, to be a part of the family, to make memories. So it's been a journey, and I think I'm definitely still on it. But it is important to question. It is.
Well, with me, I've been out since December 11th. I mean, freedom is everything to me. I feel free. Me doing everything that I told myself I was gonna do and accomplish, and I'm doing it every day. Like I just be like at work some days and just be like, you really overcame that. You know, just to have my voice back. Like that's what matters to me. That's what gives me freedom. Like just to people know like I was so honorable and I didn't waver with what I believed in. You know, so me being able to be free. I walked the lake probably a week ago, and I always just tell myself, like, I want to go do this when I get out and just to see it. When I seen it, I was just like, man, like, you free, really overcame that. And freedom means everything to me. I feel free.
Yeah.
I feel free. Definitely feel free.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give our panel another round of applause. All right, so we have some time for questions from the audience. And so it is your opportunity to ask these dynamic folks some questions. And we have a mic traveling around, so please raise your hand if you are ready.
Ask Kevin all the questions.
Hey, panel, how you doing? Just got a question for you guys. When you see a young guy, especially you, Marvin, I used to drive you around school when you were in school back over south. I was a bus driver. But I'm just gonna get to the question. When you see young guys coming in as you're aging, does it hurt you when you know that they actually are guilty and some of them are actually, proud to be in there? Like they expect that life to be their life. Does it hurt you when you see that? Thank you.
Shout out to the bus drivers. We need somebody to get the kids home. I want to, my experience with that narrative of they're hurt. That's really, I haven't really seen that to be true. The worst of the worst, what they said they did on the news by the time they got to prison and talked to me or Lil Marvin, they feel just like you and I, back to responsibility and accountability. They're going to lead with, damn, that was some dumb shit, right? That's actually not true about our youth. So no, I really didn't see that as much. I seen that they were maybe missing experience and opportunity and harm people. But when I seen the younger generation coming in for violent things, if you got close enough to talk to them, and if they talked to you, they were just like you and I, but they just had made a mistake. So what hurt me was seeing the same cycle duplicated, but these were just more kids that had choices and they made a dumb choice and now they got this thing in front of them. That's actually back to hope. That's actually one of the things that gave me hope when I seen that from the generation. It grounded me in like forgiveness for myself and my generation, and it also gave me a responsibility. It's like I'm kind of elder now. Like, whoa, when did I become an elder? But it grounded me and it gave me a responsibility. And I just want to really push back on that narrative about our youth. It's actually not true. I spent 14 and a half years there. If you get close enough to talk to them, and if they trust you, they feel just like you and I. They just made a mistake one day.
I have a question about freedom. I'm going to ask an honest question. I hope you give me a real honest answer. As a black person, do you feel free in a society that still has so much white supremacy baked into the institutions? Do you feel free?
My answer to that, I know I made a joke about it, but I think, especially as a Black individual, I have to examine the systems that I'm a part of. So freedom for me, yes, of course, having a job, having all of these, blessings that I have, I still have to examine, is that the kind of free that I want to be? And I feel like we can only move, like being Black, I feel like we have options of how we can move, the respectability, how we show up. I feel like you have to examine what places you're taking part of and how much freedom you're allotted in those, and if you're accepting of that. Because I don't feel like, it's as a Black individual where we face our barriers everywhere, but it's a choice. I guess the the only choice we have is, will I participate in that? How will I navigate in that? So no, I don't feel it, but I feel like I still have a choice in how I show up, or if I show up and take part.
That's real. I want to just add one piece to that, because I think that's absolutely right. This notion of like choice is so real, and not in a like individualistic, you made a mistake, you made the choice, it's your fault kind of choice. Like when I think about, even in the book, when the fact that there was 3 years where Ray decided not to speak to anybody except his mama and his friend. And he made a deliberate choice not to speak to anyone. He didn't even speak to God. Like he was big mad, and rightfully so. But the day that he made the choice to start to speak was he said that it was a choice to speak because he had a choice. There was a man moaning and crying and in clear grief. And he said that he didn't want to be held responsible for choosing not to intercede. And that he recognized the power of his choice in that moment to say something. And to me, that is what all of this is about. It's like, what are the choices that we have when we feel like our back is up against the wall and there's a rock in front of us? Like, what choice do we have? And often we get to a place where we think we don't have a choice, that there's nothing we can do, that there's no action we can take. And God will come through with a person, a prayer, a something for you to hold on to be able to make a choice. And so this idea of freedom is a hard one for Black folks, for sure. But I get to organize. That is where my freedom and my liberation gets to be unleashed. And I have made the intentional choice to do multiracial organizing. So I organize with my Black folks because I need a space sometimes to separate from the rest of y'all. I love y'all, God bless you. But I see the power in what it means for folks across race to be in real relationship, and how that actually allows me to be more and more free in this country and in this state. And that is a series of choices.
And I will answer your question a little directly. It makes me feel very present, understanding that we do live in a world where white supremacy still runs it, and then we get into what we're talking about, the choices. But it makes me feel present and free because at least we're living in truth. And some of the white people that I like the best were racist ones because they will tell you the truth. It's like the KKK man. We actually have more in common. I actually talk to skinhead white boys in prison, and after the third question, the rest of the conversation, we kind of agree. We kind of want the same thing. So to that question, I live in it very present. I'm very vigilant about it, but it makes me free. And in that, there's choices and options, but I try to not turn a blind eye to it. We still live in that reality.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of piggyback on that question about white supremacy. I'm over here. Hi, Kev. I'm really grateful to you all to come in tonight. This was really important, I think, as it's very, very well attended. So I'm thinking about in the context of white supremacy, and it's been going on 500 years. 500 years. I mean, 2024, and I have to. It's hard for me to get up in the morning and see where we are as a country. And so I'm wondering if any of you, what you think about prison abolition, or what you think about, the book, Jim Crow as the prison, because of the disparity, the racial disparity, who is in prison, and we're talking about Minnesota particularly, and we don't have a big prison population, but you all know who's in prison in Minnesota, and so it's real, and so where do you folks stand on prison abolition? That's kind of my question.
I can start.
I would say with prison abolition, there's the whole movement of recreating the Nordic model and all of these things, but I feel like what it's really gonna take is examining the root causes. Because taking away prisons isn't gonna take away, what is causing the crime, the cycles of violence, all of that. So I think we really need to examine our, punishment, our system of punishment, our system of, charging the legal system with all of our societal issues, from mental health to poverty to, race, like all of these things. So I think we need to work on naming and abolishing some of those root causes before we take on Goliath. Because we know that the system is never going to, it's a multi-million, billion-dollar industry. We're not just gonna take it down, take it out. So I think it's an easier, digestible chew to, start to look at the root causes. And maybe there it could have a trickle-down effect to, mass incarceration.
Great answer.
Yes.
Long as prisons has a profit, we're gonna be fighting people not to build prisons. So let's take the profit out of prison.
Yeah.
We have time for a couple more questions if anyone has one. Okay, right here.
When Anthony Ray Hinton spoke, towards the end of his talk, he said that even though he could forgive people, he couldn't trust people, and he could only trust his best friend. That was all he had left that he could really trust. His mother had died. I'd like to invite you to reflect on trust and how are you able to trust people after the system did that to you, and so on.
With me, I give everybody a fair opportunity to show me who they really is, and once they show me who they is, I'm gonna believe them until they show me otherwise. I never really, that's just me and my type of person I am. I'm really like, I don't know. People tell me I'm too trustworthy. My girlfriend tell me that all the time. Like, you gotta stop trusting people so much. But I kind of feel like you gotta give people a fair opportunity because you don't know who this person may be. This may be a friend for life, you don't know. So I try to give people a fair opportunity after going through whatever. It's shocking to even be able to trust people after what I've been through. But again, like I said, it's just, try to give people a fair shot because I know you never know who you might meet. So, yeah.
I feel like you're a saint, because
No, I
do not have that trust.
Yeah, that's just me. I don't know. I don't know. It's
No,
weird.
I admire it, and it's so commendable. But, I guess that just speaks to the spectrum, because I feel like, well, for one, I should backtrack and say, and I did it to myself. I'm not wrongfully convicted, so I think that may be, a different reality. But I feel like with trust, I lost trust in myself. My choices that I made led me to incarceration. So you lose or I lost that sense of trust in myself and my ability to make those choices, ability to navigate my life. That's a whole different conversation. But further, the trust in relationships, now it's a matter of, can I trust you with who I am? Now that I'm recovering that sense of self, can I trust you to honor who I am, my story? And that has been a bit difficult to navigate. And that goes back to the sense of belonging with people who have been through it. I feel like I can trust way easier someone who has been through it because that judgment isn't there, that stigma, that fear of, being different or, off-putting. So I feel like trust, again, I'm on the different other side of the spectrum, but it's definitely something that can be worked on. And when I see, people who are able to transcend that, it really is commendable. It is.
Yeah.
I would say that prison kind of warps your idea of trust and love. Part of my reentry journey, I've kind of had folks like, why do you love that way? Because I had to love really big. I had to learn to love without conditions because you don't know who's going to answer the phone in prison. And you had to not get hurt by that. You had to be able to still love people and say, they living their life, whatever that looks like. And trust, I seen what they did to Lil Marvin. If he wasn't on the stage, I'd tell the same story. And it's great for you to be here, for you not to have to be a damn urban legend no more. No, seriously though. Like, if you from our generation, you know, we all knew that little Marvin was here and he was innocent. It was something that we all lived with. So like after you see that, like nothing else surprises you. So you just kind of like, I'll just take everything face value. We're gonna have to survive either way it goes. So prison kind of, for me, it just warped it. Where I just came really neutral, nothing surprises me. I love really big and I don't really like, but it's a trauma response to being in that place and being isolated and just seeing horrible things happen. So it warped my idea of what trust is. You see some bad stuff.
Our next question's at the back of the auditorium.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about, different forms of bigotry. You can do things like change laws and stuff, and that's really important, but also I think something else that's really important is like changing the narrative in people's minds. Like you can desegregate everything, but that's not going to do anything if like people still have these narratives about race in their mind. So I was curious if you guys have any specific narratives about prison, about being incarcerated that you think are important to like be corrected in order to make the future better.
A good question.
How much time do we have?
It's a great question.
My first one, I talk about the stigma and a local organization here, We Are All Criminals, I feel like answers to that. Basically the idea that there is a certain kind of individual that finds themselves incarcerated, that, just all of these negative, and I like that Marvin kicks off by saying you were raised, in a loving family with your parents, because we're not all throwaways. And I feel like that us versus them, it's easier to distance yourself from the discomfort of the reality of incarceration and reentry when you think, oh no, it's just those kind of people. I'll never be that person. My kid will never be that person. Literally, it could be any one of us, wrongfully convicted or, rightfully convicted. So I feel like that is mine, just to kind of really dismantle that stigma and dehumanizing, making that person that goes through the system less than in their minds. That's what I would want to change.
Kevin?
I would say first the myth that prisons keep us safer. Like it's this question around public safety that like prisons are necessary. They don't keep us safer. They'll lock you up too. Also, to what Moseka was just saying, they don't discriminate. Much as we was talking about class and race and all that. Oh, no. I've had cellmates that look like you too as well. So that's like a myth that it's only black people that they send to prisons. No, back to as long as there's profits connected to prisons, they will exist. So instead of looking at them as these places that keep us safe from people, we need to look at them as horrible corporations that's laundering bodies. Right? It's a body laundering place where we send people. It's an entire industry. Hell, we are ripple effects. This is a remnant of the industry now. People get on panels all around the world, talk about prison and prison stuff, going to school for it. It's an entire industry. And who made it that way? So I think that is one of the myths, that it's something that's necessary. It's actually something that we created, and we continue to benefit and profit off the bodies of those people that's in those cells. Great question, by the way. Thank you for the question.
That is a good question. I mean, and we've said this a few times from the stage, but just this notion of punishment being the answer for everything. Like, we actually use punishment as the answer, not just in our criminal justice system, and everything, from our healthcare system. You getting punished for being a smoker. You being punished for being fat. You being punished for living in a poor neighborhood. Like, everything is about punishment. And we actually don't make room for redemption, for restoration, for people to be people. And I think that is absolutely a narrative that needs to change. Y'all see me in a collar. I'm also a minister, and I think a lot about this from like a Christian standpoint. And Brian Stevenson, he has said some brilliant things, but one of those things is we need more Christians to believe that Sauls can turn into Pauls. And it is so true. We operate in this idea that, like, if a person did a bad thing, they are a bad person. And like that makes no sense. Like, and so how are we, like, the fact that we have in our Christian country that we have capital punishment is wild. It is wild. That we know that the state of Alabama where Mr. Hinton was incarcerated has literally executed several people who were exonerated after the fact. We as human beings make mistakes, which means we could surely make mistakes and kill someone as a state, right? So like all of that is anyway, we have to get to a place where we believe that people can be restored no matter what. And then actually take action that matches that.
We're still in the back of the auditorium.
So I just have one. Actually, the young lady actually broke it open when she talking about prophets, and to my man basically answered my question about the prophets. So I guess my thing is, do you talk about that once you were incarcerated with the rest of the folks, you know, your boys and stuff like that? That, hey, man, they're getting paid off us. You guys ever have conversations like that to educate each other? Because that's really what this is. And then she's talking about people dying who are innocent. So who's really the guilty person? Do you ever have conversations about all this stuff when you were there?
Yeah. Yeah. This happening right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
On the yard, not only in this state, around this country, there are men and women that's walking the yard, sitting in cells, sitting in units, and this is the topic of discussion right now, that they can feel, ooh, am I being kidnapped and held for ransom? That's what prison feels like. When canteen day come and you gotta call your family and say, send this money for this phone call, send this money for canteen. They got my body here, it's kidnapping and ransom. So yeah. Earlier, that was to, you know, the answering the question around him creating a circle in a group, in the space for men to talk. This is very, shout out to Michelle Alexander, you know, just this entire panel and the, you know, the applause and everything that's coming from this audience. This is very new where justice impacted people is all of a sudden had a voice and people want to listen. But we've been saying this. This has been happening in prisons across the country. So yes, to your question, it is happening right now. With some of them youngsters you asked about too. They thinking about it now too.
Yeah, they got jobs in there. I was getting paid actually like $10, $11 an hour. After I received my check would probably be $40. You know what I'm saying? I'm working 80 hours, you know what I'm saying? And my check will be $30. They taking all the money that I'm making. So it's like, and then you paying canteen, everything costing that place. It's terrible. So it's just like she said, it's an industry. Like they just making all the money off just bodies in there. They actually, inmates call themselves cattle because it's like it's crazy in that place. It's terrible.
And prisons are self-sustaining like ecosystems. They use us to clean, they use us to cook, they use us to teach. And a lot of this is under duress or just plain out not by choice. Because keep in mind, if you don't go to your assigned role for that day or your job for that day, you go to SEG. And when you go to SEG, what happens? That goes on your disciplinary report. That disciplinary report is used for pardons, for commutations, for all of those things, for any post-conviction, remedy. So I feel like you can't just wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I don't feel like going to my job. So a lot of this is, slavery. And we need to look at that. And we need to look at these big corporations, McDonald's, KFC, these are all corporations that invest in our prisons.
Yes.
So that's something to look at and to start talking about it, because people don't realize it and they're just like, oh yeah, they're just in there, they go to their jobs, they have it easy. It's a bigger conversation than that.
We have time for one final question, and then we'll invite Myron Metcalf back to the podium, and here we go.
I spent some time in the Moose Lake prison, and I've been out for a year now, and I'm going to school for paralegal at North Hennepin.
All right.
Getting a 3.9 GPA right now. My question for the panel is that I've experienced a lot of discrepancies trying to get release planning, release assistance, all of that stuff, trying to get out, find housing, find jobs, find job training, stuff like that. What can you tell, I guess, what can the panel tell our audience tonight, what could be done to improve that for our people that are being released?
Thank you.
I would say, first off, congratulations.
Yeah.
That first year is not easy, and I feel like if it's any solace, no one told me, what I would be facing when I got out. They tell you, you get out, you get a job, you check the boxes, you'll be fine. So I think bursting that bubble, and not to say that you will not be able to do things, but there is a sobering reality that once you process that, you start to see the opportunities in front of you. What I would encourage people in the crowd would be to be that person that just gives someone a chance. I'm only here today because I got those yeses, those one-off yeses. Getting a job, applying, and that one person just giving me a chance, seeing me for who I was. And so I think the resources that you can tap into as being formerly incarcerated is definitely surrounding yourself with community, because then I feel like it will make reentry more relatable. You'll see that it's nothing wrong with you. It really is nothing wrong with you. It's just a matter of how can you navigate in this new reality. And don't give up. You really just need that one yes for housing, for jobs. And then you just keep going, leapfrogging from one yes to another yes. And then one day you'll be someone's yes.
Yeah, such a real question. The one a second when she said congratulations. Next thing I would like to talk to you, because it's so real, I want to talk to you offline. You're sitting next to someone that I know, so want to talk to you offline. It's important that we acknowledge that these folks that's coming out of incarceration, something happened to them. This was an abnormal experience that's sending them home with a scarlet letter now, AKA felony. And just like last year, our voting rights has been restored, but there's still so many other places where we're still legally discriminated against. So understanding that this human is finna face barriers based off of this past conviction. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. And I think it's important that folks that has the privilege, that they find a way to be able to give some of that privilege back. And it's a bunch of ways to do it. So welcome home. The struggle is real. The bubble is real too. Trust me, you'll be fine. But shout out to the survivors. You're gonna have to keep swimming. Yeah.
Let's give our panel another round of applause. They were incredible. This was amazing. This was so amazing and uplifting. I'll keep this pretty short. I learned so much and just grew so much listening to this conversation. Let me say, for all your organizations and corporations and whatever speaking events you all have, you should hire all these people and pay them a lot of money. And I'm not joking about the money part. Pay them for what they're doing and their stories, because it's just incredible that they would be this vulnerable in a moment like this. That's not easy. I can't imagine what it's like to go through their experiences, but then to get on a stage and to express themselves and to tell their stories is quite remarkable. I mean, Kevin, I would love a camera just to follow you around and just listen to you, Marvin, I hope you write the book and we'll make it a part of our book club. Moseka, you could have a talk show. I would be there. I would love it. And our great moderator, I gotta admit, Minister JaNaé Bates, I haven't been to church in a little bit of time, but I would come to yours, okay? So it's just remarkable. I was really nervous about seeing Marvin today. I haven't seen Marvin in 20 years, almost. I was a 21-year-old intern at the Star Tribune, about 10 feet away from him when he was found guilty. So 2 young black men in Minneapolis. I got to walk out of that courtroom, and he did not. And I've just always felt a sense of guilt with that. And it was hard for me to see him because he deserves so much more. And I'm just grateful that you came and told your story, and I hope you can continue to do that. And lastly, this is a book club named after Mary Ann Key, who was enslaved in the 1840s and 50s. And as you heard today, slavery is not outlawed. So that's something that people need to research and understand. And I think the last thing I would say is, let Minnesota be a place where we do not throw people away. That's right. We should not be allowed to throw people away. So, thank you all so much for coming.